There's a 222 acre piece of land out there. Early fishermen said it was placed there only by the charity of God, in the middle of Saginaw Bay between Michigan's thumb and index finger. If you had to cross the bay in those early days, it was a savior in the middle of the bay where you could stop and rest if a sudden squall kicked up. Eventually they put a lighthouse on it, but it's not good for ships because it's so shallow around the island. We're headed out to explore Big Charity Island, its beauty, its history, and its current resident. I'm Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
The channel's Restless Viking. Let's go on an adventure. So we're just about a mile and a half away from the lighthouse, and it's really shallow here already. And then up there, it's only a couple feet deep. So this is obviously a very dangerous place for ships to come through, which is why there's a lighthouse. So as we get closer to the island, you can see a break wall that was recently built within the past couple decades, built by the current resident of the island. But I see some other cabins over there.
90% of this island is a refuge for wildlife.
So this break wall was made, and the marina that we're going to go into was built just a few years ago, maybe in the 90s. The guy that owned the island, Bob, decided that it'd have a better future as a wildlife sanctuary. So he sold most of it after he blasted this marina with dynamite. You can see the little cut that goes in right there. And one of the issues with this break wall is that sand accumulates rather quickly, so it needs to be dredged. It's very shallow. So we got to kind of pick our way in, if that makes sense. Hey. Got to bring that motor way up, he said, so we'll see.
We are inching our way through this channel. It is shallow. Holy cow. Those are channel markers marking the path between the shallow space. Holy cow. So as Chuck said, Bob used dynamite, 60,000 pounds, I think, to blow this out. This is amazing.
You can see the limestone on the bank where they had to cut down. It's pretty darn cool. Well, we made it. That was a piece of cake. And whoa. Was this the right dock?
Sorry.
Well, as long as you don't fall in.
Yeah, for the most part.
It's just fun.
We'll hop in.
Balance in the back.
Balance in the back. So, I get the marina built, and then the feds expressed an interest in buying it. And so we never finished developing a lot of this, and the feds have let it go wild.
We met Bob and Karen, the owners of the Charity Island Lighthouse, the day before at their new campground on the mainland. Before they left for the island, we spent some time chatting, and they graciously invited us to spend the night. With gratitude and curiosity, we accepted, eager to experience the magic of their cherished island home.
Okay, so let's see, we've got 4 bedrooms up here.
Well, we brought sleeping bags too, so we can just...
Used to build this place?
No, those were the plans of the previous house.
Wow.
And he had 8 crews of guys. And every year they did a project together. They would take a weekend and do one project, and he would pay them cash. They'd have a blast on the weekend doing it together. And so we were their project for the year. So they came out and it just worked out. This is my mom and my aunt and my great grandpa and my great grandma and my granduncle and my grandpa.
Right after we arrived, Karen took the time to give us a quick tour of the rebuilt keeper's quarters in the grounds of the lighthouse. She spoke of the simple joy they found in sharing their tranquil haven, her eyes twinkling with the serene knowledge that only 30 seasons living at the lighthouse could bestow. So Poppins made a phone call to Bob. It ended up, he kind of invited us to stay the night and stuff with him. But of course, if you're gonna stay the night, you gotta offer to do some work or something to kind of help out.
Look at him. Look at him go.
Over there is the break wall that we came in on. And then the keeper's house here was, the old keeper's house was in terrible shape when they purchased it. So they ended up raising it using the foundation. And they had some guys come out and build it. And now it's a self-sustaining place. They get their water from the lake. They got the solar panels to charge the battery bank. They used to give dinner cruises here. Over there's the gift shop. The light tower is still kind of in disrepair. The Charity Island Light was built in 1857. The 39-foot brick tower is soon to be renovated by the Wiltses. On June 3rd, 1916, the light was automated, then abandoned in the 40s. The keeper's house was eventually enlarged, and in 2003 it was rebuilt by Bob and Karen because the previous house couldn't be saved. Stairs down there, the mortar's separated from the brick wall, so it's very unstable. Bob was able to swap property with the Land Conservancy for the tower in 2016 and began to pursue historic restoration of the tower. Cribbing had to be installed a few years ago to hold the lantern room. Bob says one of his final goals in life is to restore the tower.
He would get his waders on, and then he'd carry me on his back on the shore. Really? It never dawned on us to get 2 pair of waders.
Is this your barge in here?
Yeah,
Yes.
my barge and my tug.
Huh?
We cherished the long conversations we had with Bob and Karen. The gentle murmur of waves provided a soothing backdrop to our conversation as a cacophony of birds loudly discussed bird things. Our gracious couple exuded warmth, and our conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and reflection of emotional moments with guests.
You go 100 feet in that tree line, you go in there and you stick a shovel in the dirt, you can find the remains of tool manufacturing that went on out here for generations. And I was fascinated by it.
Bob recalled a story about one elderly guest who had listened to her grandfather's stories as a little girl. Her granddad was a keeper on Charity Island. While listening to his stories, she promised to someday visit the island. It was a stormy day, and Bob reluctantly agreed to bring the family out, even though the tour was canceled. This was her only chance to fulfill that promise to her granddad.
They're all piling in. He's helping her up the stairs. I said, we're going to go and start in the basement. And I run down there, and they're all milled around. They're looking at the cistern and the battery bank, and he asked me, one of her sons, the attorney, asked me a question, and I said, well, I started to explain this to him, and then I hear this, it was like she was crying, it was this sob, and I turned and looked, and Mr. and Mrs. Ellison are at the base of the stairs. She's got her hand on that old limestone wall, and she's just staring at it, and that we all heard it, and when I turned, we all turned, and everybody's quiet, nobody's saying a word. And her hand was shaking, you know, and she's staring at that wall like, and then she said, he'd have seen this very wall every night he came down to get the oil. And I realized, God, she's right, those guys came down that stairway every night to that wall. And she heard about it as a little girl, and when she saw that wall, she was ready to go, yeah.
Oh.
Bob and Karen are amazing people. They call themselves serial entrepreneurs. But what they secretly did by doing a little bit of development on the island to develop a harbor and to restore the lighthouse was to bring a lot of specialness to a lot of people. And some of the stories that they have to tell about people coming back to visit where their great-grandfather was or their grandfather is just amazing. So Poppins and I are on a bit of a walk through the trails, which there aren't many.
So it took them 16 weeks and 8 miles of drilling to blast this area, this marina, which it made it able to bring people here. Then they started dinner cruises, and then the people would wait here under this canopy area. Then they would all walk together up to the house. If they couldn't walk, then they brought their mule, their four-wheel drive vehicle, and they would bring people up to the house.
So this is the remnants of the dinner cruises, which I think were done just before COVID. So this is where you could come up from the boat. That's Bob and Karen's boat. So if we talk about the remoteness of Charity Island, here's a story that may give you an idea of how remote it is. The first lightkeeper on the island was Colin Graham. He was a Scottish mariner.
He moved here with his wife and his 12 children.
His boys had the mission that when the sails would come out of Saginaw, their mission was to row out into the water as those boats dropped things into the water for them, supplies, newspapers. The boys would pick it up, and then Colin would unroll those newspapers in front of the fireplace to dry them out so that he could know what was happening in the Civil War in 1863. That's how remote and disconnected this place is. And before Colin could be a lightkeeper, they had to build the lighthouse. And the lighthouse is going to be on land owned by the state of Michigan. But the federal government needed to have the land in their name, so they built the lighthouse. But what changed that, just a few days before he was assassinated, Abraham Lincoln signed the executive order transferring this island under federal control so that they could have the lighthouse. And there's the rubble from blasting out the marina. That's quite a project.
He has a racing stripe. Go, little toad.
When the lighthouse opened, the federal government decided that they did not need to be keeping this entire island to themselves, so they kind of divided a line that cut out the lighthouse from the rest of the island, and they sold it to Gillingham Fish Company. And Gillingham had a fishing shack or a fishing station here on the island where they would bring in fish. And actually Saginaw Bay was one of the largest fisheries in the world at one time. They sold it to another developer who decided that they couldn't really develop it, and then Bob and Karen Wiltz took it over in 1992. When the island fell into private hands, there was so much history here. It's a migratory bird stop, so Bob acquires this island with the idea that he could maybe develop it, but he's got to go through the permitting process, which eventually led to he needed an archaeologist, he needed a geologist, he needed a rock hound, and all these people with certifications that he would have to bring out to the island and pay them to do surveys of the island. And in that time, they found all kinds of historical connections from the things that they got. Bob paid for so much work on this island that our history, our records, our documents, the history of this island, the Great Lakes, and even further is better for it because a private individual paid all that money for the permitting process that caused all the research to happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise. He sold the island back to the government, keeping the lighthouse keeper's dwelling. But our serial entrepreneurs weren't done yet because they started doing dinner cruises where they brought people out and they shared the history that they discovered, and then the people that came here shared the stories of their ancestors or their great-great-grandfather that came out to this island. All this lost history can come back together here. So the dinner cruises became a big hassle, and Karen got sick and they just couldn't do it anymore. And then COVID, of course, happened. So they don't have dinner cruises anymore. Once the channel's dredged out, it looks like a couple local captains will be bringing people out here again. And you can even rent their keeper's quarters, but you can have quite an outing out here with your friends and family. Power system of the lighthouse.
There she is. Gonna get the grand tour here now. And they put in this cistern. So the way they built the cistern was they had eave troughs that would all come into this area. Their kitchen is where ours was, and they had a standpipe that went up to the kitchen. Now, when they put the cistern in here, men don't have to go down to the lake and carry water up to the house, right? They just, the rain, comes off the roof, it goes into here. You see there's a brick wall right there?
Yeah.
That's the filter wall. So the water filters through the brick, and then they on the top up there, they pump it, and it draws the water
Holy
up through
crap.
the filtered.
Are you kidding
So
me?
yeah, no, it's
That's
engineered.
ingenious.
Yeah, isn't it? The inverter sucks the power out of the battery. Magic happens, it turns into alternating current, sends it in, powers all the loads. If the batteries are getting low and this guy isn't happy, the battery voltage is too low, it'll send a signal to the generator if I switch it over to auto, and it'll start the generator. The generator will bring the power in, and it will feel the tickle of
It all
AC
happens,
coming in. It'll say, oh, okay, it looks good. I'm going to allow it to take over these loads. It becomes a battery charger, sends power down these, and starts charging the batteries.
11:03, and we get to stay we get to stay here, which is pretty cool. This morning at the Charity Island Light. Swallows are all over the place. We're gonna pack up and spend a little extra time here and then head home.
What was this?
Last year.
Last year,
Oh, wow.
as we come around the point.
It's fun, it's adventurous.
Really?
Yeah.
Out of the weather.
Yeah, what's that called that you put? Well, thank you very much.
It was, thank you for all your hospitality.
Believe me, we got more fun.
We did have fun.
There she goes. So now we leave a wonderful place, a wonderful experience, Big Charity Island. It was really a blast. Thank you, Bob and Karen. And now we're headed back to the campground. We're gonna have some winds ahead of us. If you ever get a chance, when they open the island back up, come on out and experience some history, some lovely people, and a great time. Beautiful area. So I'm Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
Until our next adventure, we'll catch you later.